Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Bermondsey in South London to Paddington in West Central London. This ride takes about 40 minutes, and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey would take about half an hour, but you do have to change trains. I think cycling remains a good option, and it is a very nice ride. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting outside Bermondsey Tube Station, and we're going to be cycling down this great protected cycle lane on Jamaica Road. This route that we're starting on is known as Cycleway 4 or C4. When it's finished, this route will run all across southeast London into central London, so it'll start at Woolwich in the east and go all the way to London Bridge. For now, only a few bits of it have been done, and there are more bits under construction as well. The bit that we're on runs from Southwark Park near Canada Water into London Bridge. We're not going to be riding the whole thing, we're going to turn off and use some back streets in a bit, but for now just enjoy the extremely high quality cycleway we're on. It's protected with curbs from traffic, the cycle lanes run behind the bus stops, the junctions are worked out so you're separated from traffic when you're turning. All in all, it's a great experience, and you could take a child riding down here and you would feel completely comfortable. It's really good. One thing I particularly like about it is the way that it's been used to improve the streetscape. So you can see these rain gardens on the left here. Those help with drainage and prevent flooding, which is good because Southwark is liable to flooding. Now, this route does continue straight on down Tooley Street, but when we get here, we actually want to turn off left down Tanner Street. That means we're leaving Cycleway 4 and we're actually turning on to another Transport for London signposted route called Cycleway 14. And while we start on a protected cycle lane like that here, it does quickly put us on quiet back streets like this, which have had a lot of their through traffic removed. And this is what we used to refer to as a quiet way. It's a route put together with these quiet streets rather than maybe focusing on protected cycle lanes. And actually they can still be really nice when they're nicely done, and a lot of quiet ways are of really low standard, but this one's actually a very good one, I think. Cycleway 14. And yeah, you can, although there are quite a lot of delivery vans and honestly people driving in quite odd ways around, lots of people sort of stopping in the middle of the road. You'll see a few more of that later. It's still actually a pretty nice ride. I think this is about as busy as it gets, to be honest. Lots of sort of vehicles reversing and zipping about on the morning that I filmed it. But yeah, it's still very good. This coming up on the right, by the way, a cargo bike we love to see. I just like to see them about. I mean, every time I pass one, I just think, oh, that's another thing that could be a van, and I'd much rather be close passed by a cargo bike than a van. Here's another guy driving in a very strange way, frankly. But yeah, in this section of the route, you really just need to follow the C14 signs. It may seem a bit twisty and turny, but if you follow the signs, then you won't get lost, and it's you can see it's quite busy. But yeah, cargo bikes, do like them, and I think it's nice when you see them about because it sort of shows that the cycling conditions in an area are improving to the extent that people feel confident. There's another cargo bike on our right again. There's more. Hopefully there'll be plenty more on the trip. But yeah, it shows that, you know, businesses feel comfortable sending their employees out riding cargo bikes around. And yeah, every time you pass one, just think, yeah, that could be another van or another truck on the road, but it's not. I'm a big fan of the way this street here actually has been treated, Newcomen Street, just outside the pub there. In the summer it's really nice seeing people sit outside and it's all quiet and down with that bollard. And just think it could be a sort of traffic choked sewer, but it's not, it's actually really nice. And here we're sort of benefiting from a contraflow cycle lane. So in this direction we're on a sort of a protected lane running down the street. And there's quite an odd experience coming up here, this truck kind of blocking the lane with its stabiliser, but no harm done really. But yeah, in the other direction we wouldn't be in a lane, of course, we'd be just cycling on the main carriageway, but you can see it's quiet enough. I quite like the way that this has been done as well, going across Flatiron Square. Although it's shared space, it's wide enough that it's good. And there's another nicely filtered street here. So these bollards there, they're what's keeping this route quiet because they stop motor vehicles, cars, vans, trucks from using these streets as a cut through. And that basically removes a lot of the through traffic from the street, and it means it's really quiet for us here. And really, those streets that we've just cycled through around Bermondsey and around Southwark, the back streets around Tanner Street, I think they're a really underrated part of the city. Actually, it's nice to see a lot of the old warehouses, the kind of narrow streets and pubs, and it's really quite a nice route to take through there on the back streets, I think, rather than going on the main road. So yes, Cycleway 14 is a really good option if you want to make your way across town. And if you'd like to see where it goes on a map, make sure you check out the description underneath the video, and I'll link to a map of the route. And I'll also link to the Safe Cycle London map, which shows you a great sort of it shows you all the safe cycling routes across London, and it's the one that I recommend and use to plan these routes. Talking of filtered streets, by the way, this is the Cut. You might have known it previously as quite a busy street. It's actually massively quietened down because they've stuck a traffic filter in the middle of it here, and you can see that's really paid off. When it's a bit warmer, there's quite a lot of outdoor seating outside the pubs and bars here, and there's also the Old Vic Theatre here coming up on the left. And talking of the Old Vic Theatre, as we exit the Cut here, we're going onto a road called Baylis Road, and that's actually named after Lillian Baylis, who was a long-standing manager of the theatre here. And Baylis Road now has very, very nice protected cycle tracks here. These were put in by Lambeth Council. Really good work, I think. Combined with Cycleway 14 that we've just cycled on, and the Quiet Way route, Cycleway 5, that I'm about to show you just coming up, these tracks actually fill a really great gap in an east-west route across sort of Southwark and northern Lambeth. This is definitely one of the nicer places in the city to cycle, and it would be great to see this kind of infrastructure in more parts of town, I really think. Now, this little bit is a little bit complicated, however. We're going to be turning off to the right here, and the way we do that is we carefully go onto the shared pavement here, and we wait at the crossing, and you can see that's a toucan crossing, so it has a cycle symbol on the lights as well, and then that allows us to cycle onto the shared pavement onto Hercules Road. So that's one of a number of places in town where in order to turn right you turn left, because turning right across traffic can often be quite difficult, so there's all sorts of different ways of doing that. That is one way. It's probably not the best way of implementing a right turn. One thing I would say is that London probably needs a little bit more consistency of how it handles right turns on cycle tracks. That's because unless you're an experienced rider, it can often be quite difficult to work out what exactly you need to do. I mean, you might say, for instance, need to watch a YouTube video to show you how to do it, and I'm not complaining about that, but I think it would probably make things a lot easier. Now, obviously, we're coming out here onto Lambeth Palace Road, and you need to wait for a gap in the traffic there, and you're going past a hospital here, and although there is a lorry blocking the cycle lane slightly, it is carrying medical supplies, so I can't hold too much against it. We're back on protected lanes here actually, and it's really quite good. So we're coming up here past County Hall, the old County Hall on the right there. That's now a hotel and various other things. And we're going past St Thomas's Hospital here. And make sure if anybody's trying to cross on these zebra crossings that you stop, because pedestrians have priority on them. And that puts us onto a Westminster Bridge. And these are brand new cycle lanes, protected cycle lanes on Westminster Bridge. They're a big improvement on what came before. They're a little bit narrow, and you might say that the bollards are quite strange. A lot of people ask about these. Apparently the reason that it's like this with the bollards, they're security bollards with deep roots, they sort of go very far into the ground, is to prevent vehicle attacks, and that's the same reason that the cycle lane's a little bit narrow. Apparently there was an intervention by the security services. It's because it's considered a high-risk location because it's a bridge. There were some bridge attacks recently, and it's next to Parliament, so that's why they've done it like that. It isn't ideal, but it's fine. Just don't plan on overtaking on the bridge. But when you get on either side of the bridge, the tracks are very much wide enough that you can overtake if you do need to overtake. So I really don't think it matters, just for that very short period of time. You might notice that we are now on, if you watch these videos, often quite a familiar bit of territory. So this is Cycleway 3, and it goes through Parliament Square. It's all really nice and protected. It can sometimes take a while to get through Parliament Square. The traffic lights can take a little bit of time, but it sends us onto Birdcage Walk here. This is a nice wide two-directional cycle track. Watch out for the birds on the track. There's a lot of those in St James's Park, which is what's to our right there. Did you know that some of the birds in St James's Park are actually pelicans, which were a gift of the Russian ambassador That was actually as far back as 1664, so I think it's safe to say that it has very little to do with the current anyone in the current Russian government, or indeed many governments before them. On our left here, by the way, is the Wellington Barracks. That's the barracks for the Guards Regiment. It's obviously placed very close to Buckingham Palace, so they can get there in an emergency. It also houses the Guards Museum, which is one of a number of smaller museums in London which I have not been to. So if anybody watching has been and has any recommendations on that, let me know in the comments whether it's worth going or not. That is one thing that I really do like about this city, actually, that there's just quite literally hundreds of like small to medium sized museums that even if you've lived in the city for decades, you certainly won't have seen them all, even if you visit museums all the time. By the way, coming up here, we're going to turn on to this track here, and one thing that you need to make sure as you go up this cycle track on Constitution Hill is that you end up on the correct side of that barrier, because it's pedestrians on the right of that barrier and cycles on the left here, and that's all well and good, but if you're keeping an eye on the barrier as we cycle up, you'll see there's not actually a gap in it for the entire length of the path, which is actually a bit of a design flaw, because it means that if you choose the wrong side of the barrier as you're entering the path, then you cannot switch to the other side of the barrier without sort of doing a limbo underneath that pole, or jumping over it, or just going back and starting again. So as a result, you will often find on busy tourist days people quite reasonably walking in the cycle path because they missed the small cycle symbols at the top there, or you might occasionally even see people cycling up the pedestrian path, which is less good. By the way, I love this bit. Really, really like cycling under the arch at Hyde Park Corner. It's just fun. It's a big piece of monumental architecture. Really fun, especially if you're doing it at commuter hours and there's dozens of people doing it at once. This crossing could probably be improved. I'm not sure if it's really good that it's a toucan crossing, because it can get busy with both pedestrians and cycles, and it's a bit odd having to navigate all of that. I think there actually used to be a separate crossing for horses there, because there's a riding school up in Hyde Park. But for some reason they got rid of a separate crossing and turned it into a toucan where everybody shares the space. And I think it would be better to separate pedestrians and cycles there. I don't really know why they ended the separation. By the way, so we're heading out onto this new Park Lane cycle track here. You might have noticed that I was sort of weaving around curbs to get to it. It's actually quite difficult to work out. You might need to dismount to get there, but there is, as I've just demonstrated, a way to cycle onto it. I really like this Park Lane cycleway. I think it's really, really good. You can cycle in the park, just to our left here, at the edge of Hyde Park. I prefer the cycleway. It's wider. It doesn't have mini speed bumps in it. It's also, although the path in the park is demarcated for pedestrians and cycles in most bits, there are just so many tourists there that they're going to walk in the path. You can't really hold it against people. You're going out for a walk in the park. Ideally, you'd be paying attention and not jumping in front of bikes, but not everybody does. The only thing that's a bit funny about this cycleway is here. It kind of diverts onto a shared pavement for a very, very short section of time. That's really not great, but as you can see, it's pretty short, and there's such little footfall here that it doesn't really matter too much. You just need to be careful. But then you go back onto the main cycleway, and it's really nice. It's actually protected not just with wands, but with those semi-permanent curbs. I think they're packed full of sand, actually, if I understand correctly. They're plastic curbs with sand in them. And then actually here, TfL has been quietly replacing the sand curbs with actually real curbs. These are real solid curbs. So this was supposed to be a temporary construction, but it's looking really increasingly solid and really quite good. There's the glorious Marble Arch Mound on the right there. If you've been reading the news, you might have seen that. Westminster Council erected a large mound of dirt, and a number of project management issues led to it being... people might regard it as an expensive flop. And they probably should have spent the money on cycle infrastructure, because the whole point was to attract people back to the West End. And the reason that I'm not cycling to the West End is because there's not a lot of cycle infrastructure to get there. So maybe pedestrianise Oxford Street and put a cycle track down the middle. Now, we're on North Carriage Drive. I'm actually cycling on the shared pavement here. You can see those little marks on the floor there, these little tablets. Just one there, we just went over one, and also on the lampposts. They are, that's to indicate that yes, this is a shared pavement. There's a little green sign there coming up. Normally, you would actually cycle on the cycle track on the road to our left. However, when I shot this video, even though it was actually reasonably late into January, you can see these trucks there, they were still packing up Winter Wonderland, which is a massive theme park slash fairground that they roll out for the festive period, and they requisition large amounts of public space in Hyde Park for it for a good chunk of the year. So normally it's a lot easier to cycle along here. I don't particularly like the shared pavement, but it was still fine, you can see. And this is where you would come out if you were on the main cycle track. You can see that's a much better constructed cycle track. Go over the informal crossing there and join the cycle track here, and then sit quite far forward so you can see the lights. Green light for us, and then continue on the cycle track down Bayswater Road. If you're enjoying this, by the way, please do hit subscribe on the channel on YouTube. Really means a lot to support the channel, and it'll help you find new videos when I do them. I did have some trouble with the lights here before, by the way. I believe that they've actually been fixed, but the sensors were a bit dodgy and they weren't detecting cycles, and I was having to wait for, I waited about 10 minutes and the lights just didn't change, and in the end I had to just go across. But I actually think that after I mentioned that in the video, TfL sent somebody out to fix them, so thanks very much for doing that, guys. I do appreciate the hard work that everyone puts into making these streets better. There's a lot of people doing really, really great work at the moment. Now, what I'm doing here is a bit nifty, so I just dismounted and I've crossed the road, and I'm going to head down this cycleway. As I said earlier, there are bad ways of doing right turns. They didn't really do one there, but I've just sort of improvised it. We're cycling on Sussex Gardens now. Interesting cycle track here. It's not quite a protected cycle track. It has a sort of a thick painted strip. I don't really know why they don't put sort of armadillos or wands in there. It can make it a nice protected lane. But yeah, we turn down this street here, and when we get to the end of it, you will see looming ahead of us, that is Paddington Station. So I'm dismounting and I'm crossing as a pedestrian, and really that's the end of the ride. We've actually made it to Paddington Station. So we've done it all the way from Bermondsey to Paddington, and yeah, I think you'll agree that was actually a genuinely really, really great ride. And if you have a look at the map, you'll see as well that it's pretty much a straight line, very, very, very direct, and it's very, very slightly slower than getting the tube, but probably more fun, I would say. But yeah, thanks very much for watching that, guys. Do hit subscribe, and do let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see any other routes, and thanks very much for watching as always. I'll see you again next time.